name is Ronnie Glasser, pronounced Glaser rather than Glazer. Yeah, everybody reads it and pronounces it like that, so don't worry. Yeah, and it's Ronnie, not Roni, as well. So, yes, I'm originally from the UK. I was born in London and grew up in Southampton, and I live in Berlin. I studied composition in Cordoba. I've also lived in Japan. I've also studied linguistics. So, and and I'm also a guitarist. So the piece I'm going to present to you today is a piece for solo guitar. It wasn't written for me to play, but I'll show you some of the techniques I used on it. And it was written as part of an online symposium, Twisted Spruce Symposium it's called, and which I found out about right here on Avazad with Jake Adams, if you remember him. I don't know if you know him personally as well, but he wrote a piece for that last year. And so I found out about that from him. He also took part again this year and wrote something lovely as well. So this is the piece that I wrote for that. It's the symposium is it's fantastic what they organised there. It's basically a week of seminars, presentations about collaboration. The whole symposium is about a collaboration between composers and guitarists. And so I went as a composer, of course, and was paired up with the guitarist Craig Winston. And so basically, they had a week of presentations and lectures and famous composers and guitarists talking about collaborations that they've done. And then we go off and we have the composers have a month to write a piece, and at the same time they talk to the guitarist and ask things and talk about all kinds of musical and guitaristic things to prepare the piece. And then after the month, the piece is sent off, and the guitarist has 1 month to learn it. In my case, sorry, I should pronounce his name properly. It's not Craig, it's Craig. Craig didn't have, eventually had too much to do. Became far too busy with lots of other engagements and couldn't record the piece. So very luckily for me, one of the organisers, Nathan Fisher, stepped in and recorded it so that it could be in the final reel with all the other pieces. And so that's a recording you'll hear today. So it was a recording made in I think about 5 or 6 days, which was pretty amazing because the piece is about 10, 11 minutes long and not easy. So yeah, full respect to him for that. We didn't get time to discuss some of the minor details of basically a quick introductory Zoom conversation like this, and then off you went and did it. So there are some things that aren't exactly as I notated them or explained them. So I'll show you a bit of those in a little while. What I found very interesting about the symposium was basically that apart from just the fact of seeing lots of other music, is the element of collaboration, which is what it's all about, and from that, it's where the idea comes from. So I started the symposium, entered it without really knowing what I was going to do, without having an idea for a piece, and that's also what was the idea. So we couldn't compose anything beforehand. So basically, the idea just came from conversations with Craig about things that we're interested in. So we just basically had a first Skype conversation about talking about what we're interested in, sort of things we do and things we like. And so I grilled him about all his what he does in his life, and so it emerged that he likes to jog around his area. He lives in where is it? Las Vegas in New Mexico, and he says there's lots of desert around there, but also mountains. And so he told me about how he likes to occasionally go jogging in the mountains, and sometimes even at night. So so that gave me wonderful visions, and I started imagining what it's like in the mountains and the stars and stuff like that. And so that sort of set the atmosphere for the piece. And then and so he jogs a lot. I mean, like very far, much further than I could ever imagine jogging myself. And so I asked how on earth he does that when it gets so difficult. And he basically explained that after a while you get to a point where your body just wants to stop, and but you still have to continue. And so and so what happens is that he described how you kind of separate from the experience of running. This is what I understood of it. I'm paraphrasing him very broadly, but that's the idea that I understood. That you kind of separate, and you can kind of observe how your body is still running, but you're kind of not there with all the struggle of what it is to continue forward. And so that was quite a similar experience to also what I find in a type of kung fu that I do, which has standing postures, various standing postures. One particular one that you would hold for, say, 20 minutes standing with slightly bent knees with your arms out. And that, so yeah, 20, 30 minutes. And so after a while, kind of the body is sort of moving around, and it's sort of difficult to control, but you can find a sort of point where you can just observe the body, and then there's a lot of activity sort of underneath you, but sort of a little separated, and kind of the space of your awareness opens a little bit. And so so that's kind of the idea of the piece. And that kind of guided the form of the piece as well. So we have a kind of beginning, and then this kind of it progresses, builds up momentum, and then this struggle begins against trying to control all this this difficulty that's happening, and then it gets to the point where it sort of separates, and you can kind of observe this struggle from sort of afar, and there's a little, and so there's it basically goes a bit peaceful, and then so that's the general, the basic idea of the piece, and because it is music, not jogging or kung fu. This is sort of the material and the kind of the guiding thread of the piece. And so I can show you the form. Let me have a go at sharing my screen for this. Okay, that's not the right window. Let me try again. Yeah, it should be that one. Hang on a minute. Maybe I need to. Okay, I'm in the wrong window. So you can see that, can't you? The form there. All right. So what I wanted to have then in the beginning, there's a little introduction where sort of tone begins. So, I mean, pitches, and it sort of emerges from silence. I wanted to also create a kind of different gradations between actual clear tone that you hear and more subtle tone. I'll show you that on the guitar in a moment. And so this is where it starts to emerge and starts to settle into the activity of jogging or standing in the posture. Um, this is, of course, musically thinking rather than thinking in kung fu. So this is how the material develops, and then in the can you see this my cursor here? Yeah. So then it starts to develop, and so the forward momentum begins in the next section, and also I created expansion of the pitch range. So from a unison, it spreads out until it gets very wide. And so then I use some waves, and so this is with the idea of you have a kind of steady um, pitch continuing, or a steady something that's continuing, and then because of some struggle, it kind of goes into waves and then settles again. So there's that through that piece. Then this developed for quite a while. Then there's this so-called struggle section, which is at the limit of what we can deal with in this state of being when we're in the normal jogging or standing state. And then there's the next section of wide open, where the idea of awareness being very broad like that. And so the rumbling from the previous section fades into something very subtle. And there are some harmonics there that are very nice, sweet sounds on the guitar. Then, hang on, just need to move that out of the way. Then there's this is how I envisioned how the musical material would naturally continue, because after this wide open section, I wanted to be in the middle of some of the piece, and so then after that the momentum continues in a steady way, because the situation is sort of controlled well, and then the pitch and the harmonies are much clearer. So we also have some percussive sounds that are not quite pitch, but then they develop into a very clear sounding pitch, and there's a sort of climactic moment. And then finally, there's a conclusion where it sort of settles again and then disappears off into silence, into the mountainous night sky with stars all around in the desert. So, yeah. All right. So then I wanted to show you the so what I did on the guitar. Okay. So excuse me. So I don't know if many of you have written for the guitar or how much you know about the guitar. And then I think you said you played the guitar or learned the guitar. Yeah. So okay, so I won't have to explain far too much. So because I wanted to get a slightly different harmony to the normal
Would
harmony
you
that you
mind
hear on the
not
guitar.
sharing, stop sharing your screen so that we can see
Oh,
you
sorry.
properly?
I
Because
need to.
you're very, really small. It would help. Thanks. That's great.
Thanks. So I need to adjust my camera as well. All right. So you probably heard how a guitar sounds like untuned with a normal tuning. Um, that's how it would sound normally. But because I wanted to find a different harmony with the guitar, then I used a scordatura, a different tuning, which sounds like that. I can also just quickly show you what the notes of that are. Let's see if I can grab that. Um, There we go. So, so here you can see that the only original note from the guitar is a G. So this G. I didn't want to change that mostly for a technical reason, because I don't like on the nylon strings when it's tuned up it sounds too tight, and when it's tuned down that string sounds really weak. So I left that as it is, and I liked G in the piece. And so the other strings are tuned in fourths with each other, and then the bottom string, so the first and second are tuned one semitone up, and then all the bass strings, fourth, fifth, and sixth, are tuned a semitone down. And so what I also wanted was to create was for the fifth partial to be present. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So usually the guitar would be tuned to the with the fourth and third partials of the string. So these harmonics, and so which I have done. But I wanted a slightly different harmony, and I wanted to base it around this partial. So what I've got is that this, can you see my pointer? Yeah. So from the G, this becomes the first harmonic. So that's the second partial of this G up here. Becomes the fifth partial of this E here. So you can hear that they're the same there. Yeah. And then tuning the other strings in a similar way to the guitar, a normal guitar you might do. These are tuned to these partials here. And then the same thing here. And that also means that each of these are tuned in the same way to each other. So the sixth is related to the third, the fifth is related to the second, and the fourth is related to the first. So I like the way that all these the strings are related to each other harmonically like that. So I have this here the same. Oops. Like that. Which you can see a little bit below. Yeah, I said you can also use equal temperament if you want, but I wanted to get a nice harmonic third here, so that these are all the same. So that means that these the bass strings, they're actually in tune when you hear a major third, and yeah, so that's the tune. Then and next, I think just before we listen to it, I'd like to show you some of the techniques I've used. I'll put myself back so you can see the guitar. Any questions until now at all? Is everything clear? Yeah. All right. So let me just get the strings. Okay. So I mentioned that I tried to create some nice sort of gradations between clear tone and more in the percussive sound. Basically, because one thing I've often noticed when percussion, I mean, the guitar can be used fantastically for percussion. There's all kinds of places you can tap or hit a guitar to create all kinds of sounds. But often when I've heard it in the piece, you have one little bit of playing with melodies and notes, and then there's a little interlude in the middle when they might tap a little, and then it goes back to it. So there's no real integration of these sounds together. So and I wanted to make sure that happened in this piece. So what I did was just found rather various sounds with the idea that it would merge, the piece would sort of emerge, the sounds would emerge out of silence in some way. So some of the first sounds are extremely subtle in that it's just tapping on the string. Don't know if you can hear that. Yeah. So you should be able to hear this tone very, very subtly. So yeah, a very subtle effect that slowly you hear that tone sounding more. In another example, you'd hear it in brushing. Can you hear that? Yeah. There's also you can hear it lower, which is almost to the sound of on the sort of the bass strings. It's almost the sound of just the of a node tone, and you also have just on the bridge. So another thing that one effect I really liked on the guitar was you can play a string, muffling the string, and so you don't really get any tone here. It's not like on the violin with Adnan's piece, where you would actually get something because you've got a big bow that makes the strings sound properly. And so if you just play that, you don't really get any tone. But as you move through a harmonic, oops, you get a slight, a very subtle emergence of sound. You also you'd hear it more clearly. So it's a very subtle, ghostly apparition of a tone that comes out. And then later on, there are also I also, as pitch develops and you actually hear a tone, then there is I use the fact that the guitar can play 3 notes fairly easily, or the same note on 3 different strings, and so there's that. And then we can also begin to expand the pitch range very subtly, very slowly by simply bending the strings. So we have what you could call a thick unison. Like that. And then from there I begin to build a harmony through that with clusters as well. A couple more techniques I wanted to show you was one that if you can use the strings as a kind of to help the percussive sounds resonate. So there's a loud sound like this. So I'm hitting the soundboard and then allowing the strings to vibrate. And then you can still hear the strings. So that was more in the more forceful section. And then later on, there's a section where this sort of fades into the background that I mentioned before. And so this is just, can you hear that I'm tapping on the neck here? And so you can hear just a very subtle resonance of the strings there. And so on top of that, because I've got a hand free, I can use some harmonics like this. So I have to mention that this wasn't quite clear for Nathan Fisher, guitarist who performed it, and so you won't hear this bit. So it's quite important. It was kind of the idea of the whole piece, that this as a subtle version of that, but he did a fantastic job, so I can't complain at all. Okay, and one last technique that I wanted to show you was in the latter section when there's more momentum and there's a percussive sound like this. And this is me with my thumbs like beaters tapping on the strings here. So that's also a kind of further development from this thing that you heard very gently at the beginning. So I think that's all that I wanted to show you for the moment. In a moment we can listen to it, and I can show you how it all that pans out in the score. Any questions so far? No? Okay. All right. Let's see then if I can get my screen to share, or the sound to share properly. So we've got that's the score. Oh, hang on. I think I am sharing the sound, aren't I? Okay. So, very important. I needed to tell you that the title, Silhouette of Starlight, my daughter thought of that for me. So I didn't know what to call it. So I asked her what to call it. And so she said Silhouette. I thought, ooh, that's fantastic. And then I said, but it needs more starlight, and some kind of starlight in there. She said, well, why do you call it Silhouette of Starlight? Okay. So there's a title. All right. So if I can get it to... tell me if you can't hear it play, otherwise I'll just let it keep running. All right. We'll start again. Well, that's the piece then. Hope you enjoyed it.
Bravo, thanks for sharing it.
It's beautiful. Sends you
Any
to
questions?
another world. It's so dreamy. I love it.
Any questions at all?
Thank you so much. Does anyone have question? Because your question is in our priority. So I have one question, but if you have any question, let's say. And if you don't have, I have my question.
Really, really, well, first of all, congratulations on the piece, and
Thank
bravo.
you.
Really enjoyed it. Just like how Aliora said, it just transposed us to this, you know, this kind of mind state. It really is, reminds you of like Starlight. And I really like how you use the idea of the techniques themselves integral to the form of the music, whereas the idea develops, the music is developing as well. The same technique, I mean. It would, you know, the technique develops the ideas, and I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
I have a few things, maybe questions, but I want to hear Atifas first. But congrats on the piece, and thanks for sharing that.
So I just wanted to say, did you have any rules for like the number of the repetition? It was so interesting. I felt a bit of the rules, but I couldn't find it in the score. I was wondering, do you have anything?
Which repetitions do you mean?
I mean, for each figure, you have some repetition, and then you go for the next one. How did you decide how many times you want that? Or is there any rules to like counting or calculating for these things in your piece?
Yes. Rules in terms of, I mean, I think it was fairly loose, but definitely I wanted the later section to be quite rhythmic, so there are more even figures there. So the repetitions are. I didn't want it to be like a fixed meter with a fixed rhythm that repeats and repeats. So essentially, what I did in the latter part was have one repetition one time, then three another, then two, and so so that it was simply more of a case of just chopping bits off the end and adding bits a bit more, so that it wouldn't quite settle, but continue maintaining the momentum. With the earlier part, it was more a case of sometimes, for example, in the first page, then it was more of a case of phrasing. So I might have, say, faster rhythms. So there were triplets or demi-semiquavers, or 30-second notes, so different speeds like that. And so that was a little bit to do with the phrasing. Also, I didn't want any even figures, so I used sevens or fives. I was also a bit careful not to have, say, three. Well, in general, more 3 and 5, because that would add up to 8, and then you'd have quite a clear sort of 8 phrase there. And so, and yes, I also kind of tested it musically to see, does that sound like, does it sound too fixed, or does it sound too rhythmic, so to speak? And I'm a guitarist, so I was lucky enough to be able to test quite a lot on that. That was generally the guiding thing in terms of the numbers. I also, with the phrasing, I don't know if that's what you're referring to as well. With some phrases, say in the beginning, I had, I think, two introductory phrases, then another one, and then for the last, another phrase for the end of the section, sort of concluding it, and then moving into the next section. So that's essentially how I worked like that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was so good. I've just done one piece for guitar, and I know how hard it is to compose for a guitar, and that's really good. You are a guitarist and you could try it. That's a really good advantage. But you did really well. Thank you.
Thank you. It's probably worth saying, for composing for guitar, what I found that's very helpful in terms of when talking about, you mentioned systems, one thing I found that helps an awful lot is to not really have a system when that you're trying to impose onto the guitar, that you sort of see what the guitar has in it, and then see where it fits into your idea. So I mean, I found it with other pieces I've written for guitar as well, that sometimes I can't really give you a proper example from what I, maybe some of the scales and some parts. I wanted to use lots of slurs. So sometimes you just need to find what's there available, that your finger can reach. So rather than going, okay, I want this particular note, you go, okay, I want, what notes do I have? I've got that one, or I've got that one, I've got that one, or I've got that one. And then, that one works. That fits into my idea, that fits into the sort of harmony I'm using, or it fits into the direction that the piece is moving in. And if I want, say, another like layer on the piece, then I might, the layer on the texture, maybe I have a melody, then you'd have to use an open string or something else. So you just kind of look for what's available rather than trying to impose your own scheme onto the guitar. So yeah, that's why fugues end up being tremendously difficult when you're trying to have three voices at the same time, and not only difficult to play, but also difficult to write, and then even more difficult to play. So
yes, you're right.
Yeah, so to get that kind of something that's idiomatic on the instrument, you sort of look what's there, and yeah, that's how I essentially compose. And that's one important reason why I wanted to have the scordatura, the tuning, was this is the base material that I'm going to use. It fits the kind of harmonic sounds I want the harmony I want to use, and then from there I can build all the other notes on top of that. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Good suggestion. Thanks.
But let me know if you need any help. Then
Yeah, for my next piece, I'm gonna write another piece for guitar maybe next year. So I will get back to you in that time. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, writing for something idiomatic, it makes the music speak for itself in a way, and then having it naturally be performed like that, it makes it sound even much better. I have a question about how you said your statement about being more and more continuous rhythm towards the end. Does that equate to your own program note or story of the piece, that towards the end it's more harmonious and more balanced after the experience?
Yeah. Basically, so after that experience, and then essentially without separating from this struggle, there is essentially no suffering there. It's broad, very wide awareness, and so once that, so this sort of understanding makes things. The idea is that it can flow a little bit more. You can guide things to work well, and also after that point, then I think runners experience it, but definitely in this sort of standing postures, there is a certain euphoria that you can find that works, and so that's a little bit there as well.
Does that kind of euphoria connect with the nature itself, and like the starlight? So you're feeling it within you, and also maybe your environment around you. Was that also kind of an interplay in your piece as well?
Sorry, could you say that again?
You're speaking about the euphoria from the standing postures, and the jogging and the hiking and everything, and with the environment itself. So with the starlight and with nature and the mountains, you know what I mean? So I mean, these two different objects that you experienced. Are you trying to also reflect that within your music?
Yeah. So there's the idea of, well, when you separate from this object of being the runner, the person doing the thing, then what that essentially is that there's a kind of, you can describe as a figure ground reversal. So there's the thing here, and then the awareness is essentially everything else except the you. So, which it means that you are essentially, the awareness is everything else that's around you, all the spaces between and everything. And so essentially you're thrown into the stars and all that together. So and everything that is in awareness at that particular moment. And the awareness is actually works in a way that's bigger than those things in awareness. But that's just kind of the idea behind it, I think. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. It shows the reflect with the music, and I think it informs also the form, the techniques used. Kind of like to find a synthesis.
Yeah, is in that section, that part is more than the. Sorry?
We have another question related to that from David Coffey. We're thinking about the observer observing the self. Might this be expressed by two separate voices of Rodrigo's Fantasia? How does that work on a single instrument? It's a very interesting question. I just thought, in connection with the last response.
Yeah, I mean, definitely about the observer, an observer observing the self. I'm not sure about about how that works in the. I'm not sure about. I'm trying to think of how that works in Rodrigo's. I guess the Fantasia.
David was thinking about the the guitar and the orchestra as two separate voices in there.
Right. Okay. I don't know that much about the piece and the background behind it to be able to comment on Rodrigo's and how that works. I mean, in terms of the two separate voices, that's what I tried to create with the harmonics as being sort of very as being something much from far away, and then with the this sort of smaller self as the tapping on the back of the guitar like that. In terms of, I wanted to say also in terms of music, the one issue here is that the listener is listening to the music, and so the listener is always going to be looking at the music as an object, or listening to the music as an object, and so this is what is kind of expressed through the music is this the space all around the object that you might listen to. But of course, it depends on the listener to be able to notice the broader aspect of the things. So in a way, it's impossible to to demonstrate this directly through music, because it's a point of awareness and the perception and how the attention works. But that's I think what I try to express through the music, as you said. Any other questions?
Anyone else? I think I did have a question at one point, but I can't remember what it was. Honestly, can't remember.
You can get back to Ronnie with email.
Yeah, I might have to do that.
Because we just passed 10 minutes after the time.
Okay, so I think we will wrap up now then, shall we? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
for having us.
yeah, I was going to say thank you so much for joining us.
It was really nice hearing that music, Ronnie's music.
Yeah,
Getting
really
to
was.
really enjoyed your questions and your insights as well. And I'm glad you shared about your piece much more.
Yeah, thanks so much, both of you. And also thanks everyone who came. It makes the forum when people turn up and, you know, show some support. It's really, really great. Just so you know what's coming up next.
Yeah.
Our next forum will continue after the Christmas break, so not in December, but in January, and there'll be a premiere of my composition, The Magic Turbine, which I've written for Atifet and the Santur. And so if anyone else is interested in having their work premiered, it would obviously have to be a solo work because it's going to be performed live. And obviously with connection problems, it's not so easy to do like an ensemble. So we're just going to do solo pieces. And yeah, or if you're interested in just having your works showcased, you can visit www.avazad.com/events, and then you can find more information that way. And yeah, feel free to share the forum and the opportunities that it offers with any friends. It's really helpful, especially as it widens scope and like people that we reach. And if you have any feedback as well, please do get in touch. It's always useful. Yeah, and yes, thanks again for everyone for coming. So our next event will
I
be
was
on
going to say
the.
this. Do you have a YouTube link to this that we can?
Yeah, we will be.
share?
We'll be sending. That's a good point, actually. We'll be probably posting it in the newsletter, the YouTube link, and on Facebook, of course, if you're, But yeah, that's a good point. Okay, well, have a lovely evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
Take care. It was nice seeing everyone.